Radio Mannin, Radio Mannin. Badion Sarion Mabalakabe.
Gilg Jew, Gilg Jay, as Gilg Nerach.
She Claare na Gael vis Gael Toyach Carnish is Babalia Musaltige. This is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert the Carslach.
Have you ever had tell of old Bobby Bob?
And I'm here to present Claare na Gael in the English language as Sahilg, and in the Manx Gaelic, Chinya na Mera, the mother tongue of Allen Vanning, the Isle of Man. The prompt for finding out more about the Stanley family was that William Gell's 1906 poem comes to a conclusion by looking at Castle Rushen, and in particular he sees it in relation to the Stanleys, though only up to about 1650, so that'll provide a useful terminus. Tydyn ag bentrach, nín rugger eishin, ach vis grena as litcherach, as lias nín, vis buech as gresach. Ach, ten ben jyn wimmed jen lias nín mar dralen satai, as ti corori ben a saig yn chiverdach lei, as sniwd ar a bis na mer ec fwldach. Welsh visual artist Kyrie Jacks is also a singer-songwriter in both Welsh and English, and she plays the guitar. Here she is with her song Calon Wlad, celebrating her heartland. Tawasgeisjach rish Radio Vanning, Stasiwn yn Asiwn, visgol ar sgelia mach by Dúlish, Allen Vanning.
Ti'n braidd wy amdan a fi, fel dwi'n braidd wy amdan a ti. Dyffryn yn braidd wy calon wlad. Rhi theilad yn cosi yn y nos, torri o'r fy nghorff, dyffryn fy mreiddwydion, calon wlad, dy ferch o'i fi. Rhan o dy brif, yn croer o'r byd. Wyt ti'n braidd wy amdan a fi, fel dwi'n braidd wy amdan a ti. Dyffryn yn braidd wy calon ti'n troi a throsi yn y nos, dan dy groen o brif a cherigos, yn gofyn lle mae'r genethfa fi'n chwarae yn fy nghof. Wyt ti'n breuddwyd amdan a fi, fel dwi'n breuddwyd amdan a ti. Dyffryn yn breuddwydio calon wlad. Dyffryn yn breuddwydio calon
Cardiff-based artist in several senses there, Kyrie Jacks and her song Calon Wlad, which means heartland. William Stanley had become the 6th Earl of Derby on the death of his elder brother Ferdinando. By poisoned mushroom, said some, by arsenic, said others, and whilst nothing was ever proved, there were certainly those who thought his death was something other than accidental. William came straight away into the earldom of Derby, but he was also keen to become Lord of Man, so much so that when it was adjudged to have passed down from Ferdinando to his daughter, Anne Stanley, William Stanley bought out the rights from his niece and her successors. And in recognition of this, King James made a special piece of legislation that appointed William Stanley, the 6th Earl of Derby, and his heirs to what was now set out legally as the Lordship of Man. And the title Lord of Man was initially the choice of Thomas Stanley, the 4th Earl, at the court of King Henry VIII, to be a lord rather than calling himself a king, given Henry VIII's dangerous jealousies, which could prove fatal to the unfortunate subject of his attentions. Lader aus Llawenach leis fúl va fessel jasnin, as vi son Tommy sa chiver de glenny. Chus Llawenach van fess, der any liga tushem is jach sa chiver. Haie nien gus al jasvoir, ach din shall jasvoir echt de whole back gus a chiver, as de gedden a fess mach as gi rish. Tre huggen nien eba junushen hutchish jach sa chiver, as vi gin mjor. Tre renny kaurel, vi ons lini ellen, as henki tai beg as shan ven kikel mach as. Vi Gael rosh figlen moore en chan ven nig toyacht, ach lore chan ven ri de mila, as huggy quirori de hannachten Mary, as de chuline over taier son. Master over shen, vi ori kre mach as mach liabi a chan ven, de chor na fedje gun getlach megeert, as we shen kor snach de tushem se tail. Henke maakte ne moier holde van shan ven, as ons hesse was slaie grey, trebe kjou snjachte, de rauw moier holde kre machen javiek. As Stephen Quigg is a Scottish singer and guitarist. On his extensive travels he met his Danish wife Pernilla, who also plays guitar on this track.
Away to the westward I'm longing to be, where the beauties of heaven unfold by the sea, where the sweet purple heather blooms fragrant and free, on a hill high above the dark island. Oh, I love my childhood, I'm dreaming of thee, as the steamer leaves Oban and passes Tyree. Soon I'll capture the magic that lingers for me, when I'm back once more upon the dark island. True gem of the Hebrides, bathed in the light of the midsummer morning that followed seagulls in flight as they circle high above the dark island. Oh, I love my childhood, I'm dreaming of thee, as the steamer leaves Oban and passes Tyree. Soon I'll capture the magic that lingers for me. When I'm back once more upon the dark island, when I'm back once more upon the dark island.
The Quigs. That's Stephen and Pernilla, and a tune by Ian McLachlan, which was written in 1958 as Dr. Mackay's Farewell to Claare. And it became so popular as the theme tune for a BBC series called The Dark Island in 1962 that David Silver wrote lyrics for it in 1963. And that same year there was also another version done of it in Gaelic. I think, well, we've heard it here in Claare Gael before now, the version in Gaelic. Van nien berge merish moirholderish tammelt, ach, henk trimpsje orri. As ish gol fodiach giant tayek heen. Gerdrau vis my egg, derau bay fodden a sherek merish moirholder, na merish alias for as alias hurek. Ren moirholder li jeli gestorres. As house van nien gol na hrúj, ren tojem nu sorry mar flia, as vi kudit lesh. Honneki draui fagest en tayek, as dilly a kellach mach, cock-a-doodle-doo, tammy gerum huish, tan nien ein jittai rish. Esh, heis jack as a voirek, as no draui jittai rish as ish kudit on serve, va altige mai corridori. Maar so dint je nien ol je skielek, as na vergetori, as trechile voir en ach henk beurtjes te loerde weg, gaui toich der giri de jinnach en ech vai getten chit der nien grene litjerach ek. And from this act of King James in 1609, William Stanley, the 6th Earl of Derby, became Lord of Man. William Stanley was interested in literature, as had been his brother Ferdinando, and although William's own work has been lost, in the 1890s his name was touted as possibly the true author of the works of William Shakespeare. On William Stanley's travels on the continent in the 1580s, it's said that one of his travelling companions was the poet John Donne. William Stanley spent 3 years travelling round, but again, many years later, in 1801 this time, a popular ballad called Sir William Stanley's Garland appeared, describing his supposed fantastical adventures, which were actually spread over 21 years, so a bit of an exaggeration. But possibly because of his perceived pro-Catholic connection, which had probably done for his brother Ferdinando, William Stanley wasn't allowed to go to Ireland to take part in operations there, as had his ancestors. Instead, he devoted his time to his literature and to the management of his estates and local administration in Lancashire and Cheshire.
Qui l'aimait tant, je l'emmerde, et moi qui l'aimais tant, je l'emmerde à présent. Le papillon suit la chandelle et l'amour suit la beauté. Le papillon suit la chandelle et l'amour suit la beauté. Le papillon brûle ses ailes et l'amour sa liberté. Et le papillon brûle ses ailes et l'amour chandelle et l'amoureuse et la beauté.
Et le papillon, c'est la chandelle, et l'amoureuse, c'est la beauté.
Le papillon brûle ses ailes et l'amoureuse a liberté.
Le papillon brûle ses ailes, et l'amoureuse, sa liberté.
C'est la chandelle et l'amoureux, c'est la beauté.
Le papillon, c'est la chandelle, et l'amoureux, c'est la beauté.
Le papillon brûle ses ailes et l'amoureux sa liberté.
Et le papillon brûle ses ailes, et l'amoureux, sa liberté.
Music for a Breton bourrée played by Mike James on accordion and Yves Leblanc on clarinet and vocals. They visited us for Cruniach a few years ago, but I believe, unfortunately, Yves has since passed away. Mike originally from South Wales, but living in Brittany for many years.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Sure that Stasiwn the Nasiwn Radio Banning, she Claare na Gael was Scholar Scalia Ma Cartnish, Meryn Peen, Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Did the ever hear tell of old Bobby Bob?
Ta Kedu Raya Craman Esh Risher in a Degger Radio Banning, Mr. Claare na Gael Master na Claire and Shenter a Clashen with Shachten, looked out Guller Scalia Mach and Girgirt. The podcast Genius, visser gedden nasty in a Degger Radio Banning, the through care of the podcast Elia, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, na Alexa. In 1601, Queen Elizabeth made William Stanley a member of the Order of the Garter, and in 1603 he became a Privy Councillor. King James, in addition to confirming William Stanley as Lord of Man, also appointed him Lord Chamberlain of Chester. However, he was perhaps more invested in his literary interests. William Stanley's wife, Elizabeth de Vere, died in 1627 at the age of 51, and this seems to have had a strong effect on William Stanley, who would have been about 66 at this time, because he appointed his son James Stanley as de facto Lord of Man from that year, 1627, and just a year or so later he was described as old and infirm, and desirous of withdrawing himself from the hurry and fatigue of life. He assigned management of the rest of his estates to his son James Stanley, retaining an annuity for himself of £1,000, and he lived in retirement in a house on the River Dee just outside Chester until his death in September 1642. Mursor en a voir coronin gren a litcherach ek de haishis lorischen chiver as the snow. As the snew, as the yinu fooltach a fesek, huggy na lauwenek stiach sa chleidig reinen. Eis gawi a fes stiach sa chiver, as renish heen lima stiach on nis. Hurri maach nach hedden as ren a lias hurek, de rawi ons lini eilen, as dairi a chatan chedin. As tre henki och a funnida, dilly maach an aran, o gau mi maach a sho, non a higum de vei lost, tammy funnich de lure hanna. Ach dregger an litja, ge neem me an em de yinu doom allowen, as high na soja roi. De leer henki gus a vilja oel, ren illach maach, o gin cremi, ta ulju jingen an oelen avi. Ach dregger ish, smai de loer vis shen as uljuach, abergie der en vergiu tuje mer machion, as high na soja roi. Now this is a song in Manx written by Brija Madrill, who sings and plays flute as a member of the trio Moot, with Helen Clegg on vocals and Rob Kane with sampling and other electronics. It's called Illach Ushlach. Illach Ushlach, a song by Buja Madril, performed there by Moot. Trerenki tai moir Hulda, Charawi goil ala chor bi, no drau fisek roll au machion the figlen moorek, as heistjach on the hirweishach or each lirach. And chidla huggy a lauek the maid and over, as we gressach, as renny coolina de chuljured ren moir Hilda shirori, kunta an vi jerkelrish. Ach en alle, gawi toiach der wei liastach. As a traslei wie eer no smoel liastach, na rawi arlsach de iri so vore. Gemoer en eerlich al javi boir holders en ach liezige bij gent, as gerenny kre mages magi, de chor na fedjige netlach me geert. Maar so de lie henk moir holder de wei skiji, as huggy rauji. Ach, van litcher gent boeiach, no rawi smunjen de berg en fraas de jet, sandelia. Kouds ren moir holder li jelig as a doris, as a chula van a shadow foslich, as kouds wien a shadow zijn eer frame doris. By the time James Stanley officially inherited the titles as Lord of Man and 7th Earl of Derby in 1642 on the death of his father, he'd been de facto holding the reins of office and controlling all of his father's estates for 12 or 15 years. James Stanley is the figure who's known by his sobriquet in Manx as "and Stanlach Moor," the great Stanley. Because of his aspirations and because of the times in which he lived and died, he's someone who's figured many a time and oft in Claare and Gael. He'd been born at Knowsley Hall in Lancashire in 1607, and at the age of 18 in 1625 was elected as a Member of Parliament for Liverpool. I say elected, but these were rotten boroughs in those days with little if any franchise, so here was an 18-year-old being appointed basically to Parliament. Early in 1626 he was made a Knight of the Bath as part of the coronation celebrations of King Charles I. By this time his father William was already taking a backward step away from office, which increased James Stanley's power. Now Mike O'Connor plays concertina and sings about this, the season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, in his song The Best of Autumn.
The sunlight blazing through the trees in flames of red and gold, the leafy carpet underfoot as crisp as nights are cold. The stubble field you put to plough, the hedgerow growing thin, they mark the turning of the year, the harvest gathered in. These are the best of autumn, these are the best of autumn. The coals new glowing in the hearth, the dusty damper down, the firelight glinting on each glass of amber and of brown, the voices raised in songs of praise, the tales interrostory told, they mark the passing of the year, the seasons around us roll. These are the best of autumn, these are the best of autumn. And as the silent stars survey the sweeping hills around, the frosty moon casts shadows laced with silver on the ground, and deep within the peaceful earth the land its strength renews, to bring again to mortal man the gifts none can refuse. These are the best of autumn, these are the best of autumn. The 7 stars are in the sky, the wind is in the west, The weary ploughman's to his bed, the hawk is to his nest, and all along the rolling downs the clouds like hunters ride. The winter days will not be long, our joys we should not hide. These are the best of autumn, these are the best of autumn, these are the best of autumn, these are the best of autumn.
Mike O'Connor, whose researches have uncovered a good number of tunes from old manuscript collections in Cornwall and who's led the Cornish songwriters in producing material for stage and musical presentations on many aspects of Cornish life and history. And that was one of his own songs, The Best of Autumn. Now, perhaps James Stanley's mother was already ill by 1626, as she died in 1627. His father evidently felt his own decline at that time. In 1626, James Stanley, also with his father, was Joint Lord Lieutenant of Lancashire, Lord Lieutenant of Cheshire, and Chamberlain of the city of Chester, although he was only 19 years of age. That was the year he also married the French noblewoman Charlotte de Tremouille. The following year he was appointed Lord of Man and later Lord Lieutenant of North Wales. But of course there was the growing dispute between an autocratic king, with King Charles believing himself to be divinely appointed, and a parliament that was inspired increasingly by dissenting sects, many of them with egalitarian views that no man was better than any other. Although a member of Parliament, James Stanley seems not to have taken part in the dispute until 1642, when things developed into war between the Royalists and the Parliamentarian factions, and that was also the year, of course, on the death of his father, in which James became the 7th Earl of Derby. Ach ons in het jy vraas de va coire voer lende fik na deerte maag Harry. Seach an ounder son an sirvé shed, doet mooi rolde, as rennie doene a Doris. Maar so henk nien litjerach de valja, ulju kudet les pik. As tred en a kellach, bear het gibber fagany, dilly maag, cock-a-doodle-doo, tammy get him whish, ta nien vrach ein jet Irish. As renne fik tannacht on, as lianten reed the chon, as a doddy rew goudes vi bio, gedden rary. As so shannon skiel mechion moir holder. As tre tamigol herish a dulligus an askiel tammy fagen der au shaw fair ein hanna rosh nullik nurri, noder ne skili, as de immer der regentje, mar pantomime menig de lure, as shanna skiel mechion nien vega barn jurg, so tammy golgus an askiel, as shaw fair elliot amaya ende sly mechion, kjolederen baljach bremen. Ah, subtle and understated. That was the Irish 8-piece band Claare, joined on that recording by an 8-piece brass section as well, and that was called Bouadon, which I think may possibly be an alternative spelling of Bowdon, meaning a bogeyman or a scarecrow. It can even be in a louse, actually.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Stasiwn yn asiwnt yn eisio, sian dy greu radio panim. As yn sio cartnish, sé Claare na Gael vis verklaasjen, mish Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Ever heard tell of old Bobby Bob?
Cuurt er au vaderloon. As van meisje regge a chor immer gesek as a William Rishimmer die blinten ljouwre. Ach, rennen jaart ege goldtuig verjere verljeel. Maar zo tre henk dag lui, hoe maakt er au ebrit sloe ege de overige. Esch, gauwe meisje tuig der smunjen me gewoon ibert magie. Ach, van adel gen nachten der aurit en ach chi tagert na berg meide, as ren reier soel. As haie red gespremen. No der au smunjen de berg kede, gedden starto en shen markjoler der baljach. Treve en olrish tamelt beg hure koe van a laag tjaun redje, as pandoech, maar de beg rairish red ljouwer. Nish esch gremigen, kren vet houwes huisja sennel, door den adel. Och, nee, door de mode. Nish tammy shan, tammy chit de wee sanuna dag lei, as hanadum gin weg goodbye sa chelg. James Stanley was unsuccessful in holding or regaining parts of Lancashire for the king in the early fighting. In 1643 he came to the island to settle matters after Edward Christian's attempted coup. This was because of James Stanley's autocratic attempts at feudality, removing inheritance rights from Manx landowning families. The following year, though, James Stanley joined the successful royalist leader Prince Rupert, a cousin of his wife Charlotte, and Charlotte famously held Latham House against a parliamentary siege in 1644, and that was lifted by Prince Rupert and James Stanley, and then they attacked the parliamentarians in Bolton, in which there was a lot of bloodshed, and that bloodshed became known as the Bolton Massacre, something that would come back to bite James Stanley. After defeat of the Royalists at Marston Moor in 1644, James Stanley retired to the Isle of Man, which then became an asylum for other Royalists. Charles I was executed in 1649, and his son, the future Charles II, was in exile. Another singer-songwriter in both Welsh and English, who also accompanies herself on guitar, is Dani Sioned. This is her song Maxim, a love song to her partner.
Sebrill, ddringais lawr at ceib o'r bach, ac yna yn y tonnau, welais fi'n yn chwerthin yn iach. Pob eiliad poenus, calon yn torri'n fy mron. Senen warai ar y don. Y dysawd mor anffyddlon sy'n croesaw I fi bob dydd, glywaf y neidiau yn llyfaen yn goroes I fod yn rhydd. Stormydd pob ryw amser yn rio yn fy mhen. Ond gwynodd yr heilwen pan gwmpodd Maxen i'r ddaear o'r nen. I run ar fy ngeiriau, gallu bod yn bir. Ond gwynodd yr heilwen o Macsen mae'n gariad fel y dir. Ar fore wan mis Ebrill, ddringom lawr at Ceibwr Bach, ac yna yn y tonnau, bym yn chwarae a chwerthin yn iach. Does dim wir yn fy moeni wrth orwedd yn freichiau ti. Ond gwynodd yr heilwen o Macsen i weld ti ar y lli. Fywynodd yr heilwen o Macsen i edrych arnom ni.
From the Preseli Mountains in southwest Wales, that's Dani Sioned, and her song Maxim. In 1650, the future Charles II appointed James Stanley to command Lancashire and Cheshire troops, but James Stanley wasn't a good military commander. He was defeated, in fact he was severely wounded, and later he was captured. And Oliver Cromwell spoke about giving the Earl of Derby a fair trial, but in fact his order was that James Stanley should be tried at Chester and executed at Bolton. So a foregone conclusion, a show trial, and retribution for the Bolton massacre that he was going to be executed at Bolton. His wife, Charlotte, only found out of his fate when, following the actions of William Gell in 1651, the parliamentarians under Colonel Duckenfield were besieging Castle Rushen, and Colonel Duckenfield referred to the late Earl of Derby. William Gell's poem, Mannin Veg Veen, a poetical sketch of the Isle of Man, closes with a reference to James and Charlotte. Small wonder he could hold his own with this stout castle for his throne. Ask for the old DIC stone. Now this was a stone found in the 1840s and inscribed DIC 1644. Dux Jacobus et Charlotte, Jacobus the Latin form of James. Ye who would entertain a doubt or seek this truthful tale to scout, 'twill speedily your scruples rout. In fact, with spending so much time in the castle, James Stanley had caused the Derby House to be built to be a place to live in for the family, and of course where he could entertain the royalists who came to seek asylum in the island. Ys nôr, dwrt y modd, draw I ffôn fansiem cormi dy fe marwich, tam i'r sgei pêl. Ach, nish, Crenach fod cost na ergyd beir bi. Niemens dwt, dwrt yn adl, ta misgol gysbremen dy chyt dy fe mychiolad yr baljach. Ciart dy mai dwt gol merem, as gol taich dy cioliach nis, fod clai a lŵt, as fod I usgyn sich yn ach dy chlai a drum. As ren na modd y cordeel, as ren na siŵr yn bŵr a chelia. Charaw I ffod ar os me denka der ket van a chiad us a red, as jean chud trai as 3 lan vlioch. Nish esh, cyrryd bys gyn word, ma chian sgridda, doet an adel. But while yam tiggle quai bys tannacht an ginnel, tret an wannel leg a ons gau, dreger a ket. Nish tam I shan, tan a fieglen em chit de ve niau virach, as barely am ve ma hail jorish an och, as mish cronena, na rai me geert luk na luchi, as ve form of benastje, cormi de ve bite. Now, the Incredible String Band weren't being boastful in their name, it's just they became the house band at Clive's Incredible Folk Club in Glasgow, run by band member Clive Palmer, originally in a duo with the songwriter here, Robin Williamson, and they were later joined by Mike Heron. This is Robin Williamson's October Song.
I'll sing you this October song. Oh, there is no song before it. The words and tune are none of my own, for my joys and sorrows bore it. Beside the sea, the brambly briars, in the still of evening, birds fly out behind the sun, and with them I'll be leaving. The fallen leaves that jewel the ground, they know the art of dying, and leave with joy their glad gold hearts in the scarlet shadows lying. When hunger calls my footsteps home, the morning follows after. I swim the seas within my mind, and the pine trees laugh green laughter. I used to search for happiness, and I used to follow pleasure, but I found a door behind my mind, and that's the greatest treasure. For rulers like to lay down laws, and rebels like to break them, and the poor priests like to walk in chains, and God likes to forsake them. I met a man whose name was Time, and he said I must be going, but just how long ago that was, I have no way of knowing. Sometimes I want to murder time, sometimes when my heart's aching, but mostly I just stroll along the path that he is taking.
The Incredible String Band from 1966 and Robin Williamson's October Song. Robin's brother Roy was a member of the Corries, and it was Roy who wrote Flower of Scotland. Mar so, dúirt ket, henk me boy, ach scón de corbai is genel fisse mer na tachras rum. Imi mer in gus bremen, dúirt an adel, as tarde wei de chjolle de baljach. Dat tigla said Gael ceol I. Reader, concludes William Gell, our task has pleasing been, though further traces may be seen of Mannin's ancient king and queen. Well, again, that's a reference to James and Charlotte. Imperfect though this sketch and plain, I trust it has not been in vain. So farewell, till we meet again. And thus ends, at last, William Gell's 1906 poem, Mannin Veg Veen, a poetical sketch of the Isle of Man. As synach seo to Gerachit Claare Gael here show. Between 7 and 9 you can enjoy the best of chill-out music for your Sunday evening in the company of Chris Pearson. Then from 9 o'clock, Judith Lay will be here with Sundown. Claare Gael comes to a close with music from a band from Brittany. They came as young and exciting musicians to Chroniach and returned in more recent years as seasoned and accomplished performers with a modern twist on Breton traditional dance. They're called Fors Penaus. Ach, Sinead Cartnish, and so until the next time, this is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert de Carslach.
Foul Bobby Bob.
Wishing you a very good night. Eve I'm a Chriort, as Duts, my Yeri and Share.